voracious book reader.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've written my books, my autobiography, and then I had my works, my 4 Broadway shows, off-Broadway shows printed as plays.
Yeah.
And so that's how I come to writing books.
Yeah. Yeah. So this one's been around. You started what at 2010? Ghetto Klown was the first show.
No, man. The show took me forever. That was the hardest one to do of all my shows because I had to break the sort of the portrait of an artist. Yeah. Like the career. Yeah. And no one had cracked that code yet, so it took me a long time to figure out how to do it. Otherwise, you sound like you're just patting yourself on the back, or you sound like you're doing your resume. You know, yeah. It doesn't work. So, you know, at first I thought, it's going to be a narcissistic, egocentric ride, but it was totally the opposite. It's so much more self-flagellating. You have to hurt yourself so bad in order for the piece to work. You have to reveal stuff that you never wanted to reveal.
Like that's how you get the audience on your side, by just
that's the only way the thing makes sense. That's the only way the thing plays. That's the only way that the piece has a 3-act structure. Yeah.
I see. So you've got to sort of start like low and then make your way up towards a successful career, and all of the troughs.
Well, my journey happened to be low. Yeah. Because
But it's also more interesting story if you start from like nothing, right?
Yeah, exactly. So luckily I was born into poverty. So
for
story-wise, for a story, it's great. So I was born to nothing. Yeah. And then lost what little we had. Yeah. And then I was a troubled child and a lot of problems. Almost got expelled from school, got arrested. A lot of violence in the neighborhood and at home, and then I found myself. Yeah. And then you thought it was going to be an easy ride, and then that's when when you start succeeding, then that's when a whole new host of problems come your way.
Yeah, I was surprised because you've done all these shows before, and a lot of them were like autobiographical or loosely autobiographical. So how is it that you've managed to kind of avoid a lot of the subject matter up to this point? Like 4 other shows before this.
Well, my first show obviously was just about my neighborhood and other people, and then my second show was about a fictitious family loosely based on my family, kind of my Long Day's Journey to Night comedy, Latin version, and then Freak was basically birthed to coming of age, so like 14, 15. And then Sexaholics was just about having kids, being a dad and the women in my life.
Was there a sense that up till you really started talking about yourself that you felt that maybe you as a subject weren't as exciting as the people around you?
I never wrote these pieces to showcase myself. Yeah. It was I had a burning need to tell a story, and definitely I started with other people because I found them so much more fascinating. Yeah. And then it started becoming about me just because of, like you can't really tell your story. You shouldn't be writing a story about yourself unless you had an incredible life, or you can tell it. Yeah. If you have a regular life and you tell it incredibly. I felt like I was of the latter, that I had an okay, interesting life, but it was more the way I told it and the way I paid attention to the minutia. Yeah. That brings people into it, so you can experience a whole life as it really happened in a way, but on stage with one person.
But that's just early on, or like you look back at your life, you don't feel like it's extraordinary? I mean, it clearly it is. It is like
it's hard for me to be objective about myself. I think I'm an incredible storyteller. More than I had an incredible life. A lot of crazy things happened to me, and I had, the unfortunate. The misfortune of having had some horrific things happen to me in my youth, but then incredible success happened to me, and then the ups and downs of anybody's career. It all goes up and down, and you got to try to survive it.
Yeah. So are you a reflective person generally, or is this kind of force you to take a closer look at yourself?
I wasn't a very reflective person, but I was forced by my high school to go into therapy. Otherwise, I was going to get expelled. And they forced me into therapy. And therapy at 17, and I was there for 4 years. And I would pay them it was called the Youth Counseling League. and you pay them whatever you made. I worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken, so minimum wage.
You paid them in chicken?
Yeah, chicken leg, a piece of extra crispy bucket, and that made me incredibly self-aware.
Yeah. And
changed me completely. It saved me.
Do you touch on that in the show at all? The actual therapy itself?
No, I had it in there a lot, and it had to be extricated just to compress 40 years of life on stage, and now in the book, there was no room for it.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. I wanted to pay tribute to it because I find it was so helpful to me.
I'm really interested about like what like a 17-year-old. Most people discover therapy much later in life. Like, as much as you can, take me through that like first session. What's that like being a kind of like a rambunctious 17-year-old?
It's hard, man, because I really resisted it. I hated the therapist at first. It's kind of a typical scenario. I was really antagonistic, wouldn't talk. Pretty soon the dude won me over, and he was my best friend. And then he, it was a low paying job, so the dude had upward mobility in his eyes, so he moved on. And then they I kept getting different therapists because everybody, it was a low paying job, and they wanted to move on. So I had a whole mess of different therapists. But pretty soon I was hooked, and I was going twice a week, and pretty soon I was 21, and I wanted to graduate to group therapy. I loved it, man.
I was watching the Charlie Rose interview a few years back about
you did some research. Look at you.
Yeah, well, I got to have a little bit going to this.
You're like a real journalist.
Also, just like, any chance I get to watch Charlie Rose, I'll take it. I love Charlie Rose.
He is the bomb, isn't he?
But you said something towards the end. You were talking about, I think it's your current therapist, and, he made some comment about how, like, basically I deconstruct you in probably a pretty accurate way about, have you been like the class clown, how you need to sort of like, be a little bit more in the moment, how you're like deflecting, things like that. And it's sort of, it's interesting. Did you feel like the initial objective of therapy was to sort of like move you away from that, from being the class clown, from being the guy who just kind of acted out?
Well, I think that was the school's idea.
Yeah.
Because, I was out of control, and I was really smart. So a smart person who loves mayhem can be really dangerous in the school. So I was, locking teachers out of rooms, orchestrating walkouts.
Just for fun.
Just because I just was always wanted to be the center of attention, and I just wanted things to be fun. I just wanted fun all the time, man. And sometimes school wasn't. It wasn't part of the fun, so it was more fun to be disruptive, and so the school needed to control me in some way, and so they put me in the therapy, and they thought, it would sort of dismantle the bomb, and I would no longer be crazy, and it worked. It's like Equus. All of a sudden, you dissect the body.
Did it though? Because you're here now. Like you've got this career based on being a class clown.
Right, but it's not. It doesn't happen in my life anymore like it used to.
How do you mean?
Now it's mostly like when I'm on stage.
Oh,
or
I see. You're
acting.
Channeling it.
Yeah, like I'm much more calm in my regular life. I was so out of control, and since junior high, what you guys call middle school.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, junior high. I was California. I think we call it junior high.
Did you too? Yeah.
That's
people
interesting.
with money call it middle school. Yes, I was in middle school.
Yeah, you saw my polo shirt. You figured I was a rich guy. It's interesting though. So I guess what that gave you in a sense was the ability to, like I said before, was to channel it. So is that what drove you to perform, to sort of like more, I guess, kind of like formal outlets for?
Well, I was already performing.
You're already performing.
Yeah. My math teacher, Mrs. Zuffa, was like, Mr. Leguizamo, you have the attention span of a sperm. If you really handle your annoying attention pain ways, and he told me to become a stand-up. So I looked, back in the day we didn't have internet, so in the yellow pages I found an acting school, Sylvia Lee's Showcase Theater, and I went there, and I was 17, and I paid my Kentucky Fried Chicken went to paying therapy and in my acting classes, which are about $300 a semester or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was in there, and I found myself, man. I did a scene from Dino, which Sal Mineo, you're too young to know who Sal Mineo was.
Oh, I know Sal Mineo. Yeah.
Oh, do you?
I've seen Rebel Without a Cause.
Oh, yeah, right. So that actor, he was pretty famous back in the day.
Yeah.
And he did this thing, this movie about, it was a play first, and it was a movie about this kid who's troubled, hates his dad, is getting arrested. So it was kind of like my life.
Yeah.
And I did that, and all of a sudden I got all these offers to be in NYU films, and I was like, I made it, man. I made it, and I loved it.
It seemed, yeah. I mean, you've got like it seemed like a lot of stuff once you started doing this happened pretty quickly for you. Like even like your first one-man show, you started getting a lot of attention, right?
Yeah, you know, I mean, it didn't just come that easy, but
yeah. I know, like in retrospect, it's always easy to just like point out things. I mean,
I worked hard. Yeah. I got to say, I worked my ass off. You know, I mean, I was 17, but I was taking acting classes there. I was doing the therapy, and then I joined HB Studios when I was 18 or 19. So I was going to HB Studios. Then I was going to then I went to Strasberg Institute.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
When I was 20 or 19. So I was going to a lot of.
You were serious early on.
Oh man, yeah, I loved it. It was like I don't know, man. I was passionate about it. And it was fun. There were a lot of beautiful girls in the classes and everything. Yeah. And so it was an incredible experience, and I loved it. So pretty soon I got my first student film, and the student film won an award. And all of a sudden I got Miami Vice. I was a punk 19-year-old villain on Miami Vice.
What was that experience like?
Crazy, man.
I can imagine.
You feel like you hit the lottery. You know, you're 19, you're on Miami Vice, like the hottest show. But I was the guest villain. And you know, I was kind of, I don't know, I was all right. I was mad wet behind the ears, so I was okay.
Yeah, you must have. It sounds like you had a few moments like early on where like you're like, okay, this is it. Now I've made it. Like officially, like it's just gonna be easy from here on out.
It always feels like it's gonna be easy, but it never is. But yeah, it looks easy. So, but yeah, I from Miami Vice, then all of a sudden I got an agent, and then all of a sudden, you know, I started auditioning for things, but not getting things either. You know, I auditioned for a ton of things, but you know. There were limited opportunities for a Latin man back in the day.
Sure. Yeah. Did you actually do stand up as suggested to you?
You know, I did a little bit of stand up, but it wasn't really my thing, and I never pursued it. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I loved acting and creating characters. So I guess I started pretty fast doing sketch comedy. I was part of an improv group called First Amendment. That was a big deal here in New York, where, you know, Robin Williams had come by and Bruce Willis. Yeah. And I came towards the tail end when it was collapsing, but I was performing there, and then with a girlfriend, we became a sketch comedy group. I went up for Rodney Dangerfield, and then I started writing my own stuff, doing it in the performance art spaces.
Yeah. How did the one man shows start? Like what was behind that? Why not put on a broader show, or why not like write a book? Like why was that the right form at the time?
You know, it just centered all the things that I really love, like great writing, personal storytelling, autobiographical storytelling, characters. I don't know, man. I just saw it that I could really take it to a whole new level, because I had watched Spalding Gray, who I loved, and Lily Tomlin, and Eric Bogosian, who brought sex and rock and roll to it, and Lily Tomlin, who brought made it a play. And Spalding Gray made it personal, but I took a little bit of everybody's and I turned into an autobiographical play where I played all the characters in my life.
Are you a little bit of a control freak? Did you feel like
I became a control freak? I don't think I was a control freak, but I definitely became a control freak. But you know, acting never lets you do that, so it kind of always keeps me honest. Acting does not allow you, because you're always giving up your power to a director and to.
But that's as close as you're going to get to that, right? Because you're literally playing every single part in a play.
It's incredible, man. It's incredible. I mean, and also the freedom that you have in theater to keep. I mean, you've done a lot of television, a lot of movies, and I see what happens to scripts. You know, the amount of input, the amount of development, the amount of opinions, till things are watered down pretty much to, you know, corporate black. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. But on stage, you're really allowed. I was really allowed almost complete control, freedom to say what I wanted to say, how I wanted to say it, and what I wanted to talk about. Yeah, there were risks, like with Sexaholics. They didn't know if that could be a Broadway piece because it was so sexual and so graphic and so violent. Even though it was a comedy, they didn't know if there would be an interest.
What does a director actually do on a play like that? Like what kind of input does the director have?
Well, Peter Askin, who helped develop Hedwig and the Angry Inch and Trumbo, the story of the blacklisted writer, famous black, if people don't know, they're very important. And Spike Lee and Fisher Stevens. Yeah. You know, they give me that outsider point of view, man, that's so needed because I'm so inside the stories, and I'm doing so much that I need somebody to really help me look at the whole thing and judge it from the outside and go too much, more of this, less of that.
They're almost like an editor in a sense.
Yeah, very much so.
When you're actually developing the show, I mean, are you bouncing these things off of people in your life, which I know can be probably kind of tricky because in a lot of cases you're actually writing about those people, right?
You know, I always performed it in small spaces often. You know, like Mama Mouth and Spikrama was easier because they were monologues, so I could do one monologue here, one monologue there. But when it became like Freak, I had to perform it all at once. But I would do it just with my friends, not my family. Obviously, I couldn't put my family there because it just didn't want them to know. Plus, I didn't know. You know, you don't ever know what's going to end up. Why upset them? Yeah. And all of a sudden, the shit gets cut, and then now they're pissed off at me, and it's not even in the play. You know, so I just did it for all my friends. For a long time, and then it starts to get shaped. Then I started doing it. Then when I felt confident, then I went to PS 122, the garage, the home. And I started performing in all those spaces. But
there is some sort of an inevitability that, like, at some point they're going to end up seeing this. Like, at some point, my mom is going to end up seeing this thing.
You know, I deny that. I am in the total denial. So I don't see that, because if I did see that,
that's good. That's good for the. That's good for the.
I have to. Otherwise, right? I would quit.
But you had, like, what happened when when she actually saw it?
Wow. She was very upset.
She was very upset.
Yeah. You know, I think the first time my mom got really upset was in Spikorama, because at first she didn't get it. You know, oh, those characters are so ridiculous. Yeah. Who could they be? And
just these cartoon characters.
Yeah. So she didn't see herself in it till eventually we were having dinner, and I said, you know who that is? She goes, no, it's so, who could they be? And I said, it's you, Dad, and all that.
You're the one who told her?
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell her?
Because I can see. I was like,
she was so happily oblivious.
Yeah, but I was like, I had to spoil it for her. A masochistic is got to be what it is, and then she was like very upset by the whole thing, but in a different way, not because she was divorced from it and they had a different name. Yeah. She was upset at what happened growing up and stuff.
She was upset having to relive it.
Right, not at me. Then when Freak came and it was her and it was supposed to be her, then, you know, she was really angry at me. And then my dad was angry at me. And then my family was like, I was a whipping boy at all the family gatherings, because they go, how dare you think you can talk about the family? You think you can be the one that puts it all out there? And so, you know, they get a few drinks and everybody would just jump on me.
It seems it was veiled then, like, right? I mean, these it was veiled. These were kind of veiled, like caricatures. You didn't really mention anybody by name.
In Freak?
Just like early on, was it a little more anonymous?
No, Freak. I mean, mom and dad are mom and dad.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, if I'm saying I'm John.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty clear. My grandmother. You know, everybody knew who I was talking about.
So, I mean, it's different. I guess it's a little different now in the sense that, you know, like, it's your wife. I mean, you aren't as removed from these things, right?
You know, it still has the same basic traps. Like, I can't let my wife see it till it's totally done, because I'm saying a lot of stuff. You know, and this one, the new one, I'm worried about. You know, because I have to talk about my kids, so I don't want to.
That's what I'm saying, though. In a sense, it's even more. You're risking even more, right?
Definitely. I mean, I'm very worried about my new piece, Latin History for Dummies, because I didn't plan to use my kids in it, but all of us, and you know, these pieces, they kind of write themselves, and I have to sort of surrender. Yeah, you got to capitulate to it, and I've learned that early on, you know. So, I mean, right now, my son became sort of the bookend of the whole thing, and my daughter. So I'm revealing a lot of things that, at one point, if it does become a Broadway show, I have to sit with my son and prepare him that a lot of his life issues are going to be on stage. So, you know, I have to, and I have to respect him, because you know, it's very different than my parents, who I didn't really respect as much.
Yeah. You sounds like you didn't have any issue pissing off your dad.
No, I did. I felt like it was sort of my revenge. Yeah. I mean, my mom, you know, she's always been the incredible single mom, Latin single mom, working 3 jobs, going to college, you know, doing everything she could to give us a better life. But my dad was more like a deadbeat dad.
What's the process like for you when you're developing? When you're saying, I mean, it sounds like you're kind of like channeling it in a sense, and I get the feeling when you're doing these impressions on stage that it's almost like channeling somebody, right? I mean, it's channeling somebody you knew.
It is. It's
you're
crazy,
like
man.
you're like inhabiting their spirit.
I'm like a shaman, you know. All of a sudden, I'm doing these voices, and they're coming out really great. And all of a sudden, voices that I didn't think I could do, and people, and all of a sudden, a lot of their physical traits start to come into my mind, and I start, you know, because I love mime, not mime like you see in the streets, but pantomime. You know, but pantomime, like of acting, you know, like the details of people's personality revealed through their body, through their gestures, their posture. I love that kind of stuff, and I love for people when I'm on stage to see these characters and to forget that I exist, you know. That's my biggest joy, is when they really go, I saw those people, I saw those rooms, I saw where you were at, and I didn't see you. I just saw these characters. Like in Ghetto Klown, people swore they saw my grandfather on stage, and that's the biggest compliment.
I mean, can you pull that out at any time? Can you be somebody?
You know, I think when I do on stage, I prepare really hard, yo, man. I'm a freak about that stuff. You know, I'm there like at noon or 1 o'clock at the theater. You know, nobody goes to the theater at noon. I'm there from noon till the show preparing.
What does that entail?
Oh, it tells me doing all the voices, all the characters, doing, you know, the characters that I feel like maybe I'm losing or things I need to perfect.
But it's not. But is it just? It's not just going over the script over and over again.
It's going over certain parts of the script. It's going over the physicality. It's going over, you know, walking on the stage and doing all my method exercise stuff of visualizing spaces, smells, odors, all the sensory. So when I'm on stage, I'm really not on a barren stage. I'm in those spaces myself. You know, I'm really seeing those people and in those places.
Do you talk to yourself a lot? I feel like you might, like especially when you're prepping for a show like that.
I love talking to myself, man. I don't do enough of it anymore because I got kids. I don't want to think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
But I used to love talking to myself, and I definitely do that when I'm doing one-man shows.
What is? I mean, is that part of the process of getting ready? Because you've got to sit there and just perfect a voice, right?
Yeah. You know, a lot of great actors do it too.
Yeah.
You know, they do. You know, I've worked with a lot of great actors, and it's part of acting, man. You just talking as the character, and you're talking to yourself, and you're prepping, you're psyching yourself up for the scene. And kind of talking to yourself is one of the best ways to prep yourself for a scene.
It's interesting because, you know, I know, like, and I've heard you describe it as writing. Again, getting back to our friend Charlie Rose, that you, every day that you're doing a little bit of writing.
I always write every day, yeah.
Are you talking like literally writing, or is part of that, again, like finding a way to inhabit these people and using that to tell the story?
It's a weird process because, I mean, you know, all my one-man shows, I always wrote them first.
Yeah.
And then, because, you know, your writing mind is very different than your speaking part of your brain. Mm-hmm. And there's two different aspects of writing. I mean, so I write it all by hand, and then I start acting, and then I start improvising and just letting, and riffing and just going off. And then I run quickly and write that down and start incorporating that. And that's kind of the way I write. But every day I write like a lot of different things. You know, I write stuff that's bothering me. I kind of a little psychoanalysis, or I'll write a joke, or I'll write something political that's bothering me. But I always write, and I file it, and that eventually becomes something later on in life.
I mean, you've got literal therapy. You've got therapy in the sense that you're sitting there writing these things, and then you've got therapy in the sense that you're like going up on stage. But
art is therapy.
Yeah, but it doesn't replace your need for actual therapy.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't, because you still need an expert to break you down and tell you what you're doing, because somebody doesn't really see your behavior and break it down and go, why do you keep doing those retarded things to yourself? You know, you're the one that's perpetuating all these problems, and you know, you need somebody who's objective, because you're not going to listen to your friends, really.
Yeah.
You're not going to listen to, you know, I mean, your wife may suggest it, but, you know, you have to give the power to somebody.
Yeah. So yeah, somebody objective.
That you respect.
Yeah.
And I respect these people, but it's different.
But somebody who's like outside of somebody who doesn't have a horse in that race, right?
Right, exactly. Who has, somebody who's objective.
Yeah.
Well, you feel at least they're objective. I mean,
yeah.
It's like a paid friend. It's kind of a ridiculous concept, therapy, but but it's a necessary evil.
You did that impression of your therapist, and I'm just wondering, like, how are you able to shut that off? Or you do you just sit there when you meet people like you've met me? Do you just sort of like, scan people, look them up and down, like figure out how to do their voice?
Yeah. No, definitely. I'm always like, as an actor, you can't help it, man. You're always, I was always fascinated by people and their behavior and who they were, and my imagination was always about where did they come from? Why did they do that? How did they pick that career, and how did they become who they are, and their voice patterns? I mean, it's always fascinated me. So, yeah, that part of me is always alive. It's always paying attention to things.
This is sort of and this is it's kind of a meditation thing, but I suspect that one of the things that therapy has helped you do is shut some of that off and like really just kind of relate to people, like be in the moment, as they say in like Buddhist Zen.
I don't know. I think it's the opposite. I mean, I think I was really much more in the moment before.
Interesting.
And therapies helped me sort of to organize my thoughts, and it made me very self-aware.
Yeah.
I wasn't self-aware at all.
Yeah. That's what I mean. I mean, be in the moment, because again, like, maybe it's hard to have a conversation with somebody if you're, again, scanning them, if you're trying to figure out their mannerisms, and it's hard to just sort of like relate to somebody.
But I don't think I would have written my one-man shows if it wasn't for therapy. I mean, therapy is the one that really made me start looking at my life and examining it and looking at every detail of it and being analytical about it. And that's what made me be able to do Freak and do Ghetto Klown. If it wasn't for therapy, I don't think, if you don't have that sort of look turned onto yourself, sort of that eye back on yourself, that selfie, that therapy does, you can't write about yourself. It's impossible. You're never going to be able to write anything interesting anyway.
And like we said before, that ability to not just look at yourself, but to be critical of yourself, because you can't make fun of other people until you can make fun of yourself. Right.
And if you're going to write about yourself, you better be blatantly honest, and you better be making fun of your damn self if you're going to make fun of other people. Otherwise, well, what's the point?
Yeah, you weren't afraid of making fun of Steven Segal after what happened?
I was afraid a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. The dude is big. He's 6'5".
You got to tell the story. Like, what happened when you met Steven Segal?
I was doing this movie. I was gonna be his right-hand man in this movie, and we were all gathered in a room like this, about to do a rehearsal. The director, the other actors, B.D. Wong, Joe Morton, Oliver Platt.
Yeah.
And he comes in and he's like, "I'm in command. What I say is law. You disagree, look me in the eye and tell me so." So I started cracking up because I thought he was kidding, because who the fuck talks like that, right? Yeah. And because I was laughing, he got so fucking mad that he went and he ran towards me with an elbow and hit me in the solar plexus and knocked me against a brick wall and basically knocked me out.
Do you think, hypothetically, no.
Whatever it is, no.
Could he just be a method actor on par with?
But I was on his side. Okay, yeah. There's a lot of good excuses, but none of them are valid.
He's just an asshole.
Yeah, because I'm his right hand man. Yeah. Why are you hurting me? If I was the enemy, okay, he's being method. Okay, maybe. But I was the only guy on his side.
Yeah. It's a lot of the stuff that's been getting like noticed. Obviously, like people get excited when you talk about celebrities. Right.
Like,
people love that.
Because we know who we're talking about in common.
Yeah. Is that any different? Like writing about a legitimately famous person versus writing about somebody who's just in your life.
Well, when you write about them, then it gets tougher. Like when I wrote stuff about Patrick Swayze and the fights we had in To Wong Fu, then Patrick got really upset and called my publicist, and then he wrote about it in his own biography about what happened, which was great, because then all of a sudden I really saw like a different perspective of that same situation.
Yeah. How did it seems like the shows are kind of a means, an end in and of themselves. Like you're doing it on Broadway and you're doing these long runs. you know, are you ever like working towards something else? And you know, there's the HBO special, and now you've got this graphic novel.
Yeah.
Like, how do these adaptations come about?
Well, this is the first one that I felt could be a graphic novel, man, because it felt like it traveled through so much space and time, and so many different characters. And I did Ghetto Klown very differently than all my other plays. It was much more a documentary style, and it was definitely much more play, much longer scenes, many more characters talking to each other at the same time that I didn't really do. I mostly like, you know, a one-man show is two people scenes. I was doing 3 and 4, and it was a blast, man, and longer scenes. And so I was very proud of the work I was able to achieve in Ghetto Klown, and I thought, wow, these will make a great graphic novel because there are scenes, and it is like a little movie as opposed to just, you know, like a rant. You know what I mean?
Why did you think about comics before thinking about, you know, just like, you know, you're an actor, you've done movies. Why were comics the first place your mind went?
Because I love graphic novels, man. I do. I mean, Persepolis is one of my favorite, and it's one of the Dark Knight, of course, everybody's favorite too. Yeah.
So you've been wanting to do one for a while then.
Oh yeah, I have. But I had no idea. I mean, I've been trying to write about a Latin superhero, trying to come up with a Latin superhero. But that takes so much goddamn work, man. To really
and it's
get
hard,
the
like,
genesis.
And you can be, you know, it's easy enough to be original if you're talking about your life versus like there's so many superheroes out there.
The superhero thing is rough. I mean, I guess because of the way my life has been and it geared me towards writing about myself. The superhero thing was just more difficult. Just you know, I'm not as sci-fi minded as I thought I was. Yeah. So it's you know, it's hard work for me.
So you're telling me that Super Mario Brothers didn't plant that sci-fi seed?
Do you consider Super Mario Brothers to be a sci-fi?
There were
sci-fi elements.
There were robotic dinosaurs in it.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, that was the first video movie.
Yeah, that was the first video game movie. How did you, like, I'm getting the wrap-up sign, and I want to ask you about that because that was certainly the first time you were on my radar, and probably a lot of people.
When you were 8 or something.
Yeah, and when we were talking about, you know, like when you get to every level, you figure it's like smooth sailing from there. You're doing this big movie, you know, like Bob Hoskins, Dennis Hopper, like. You think like, okay, I'm a movie star. I'm like literally one of the leads in this movie, and then it wasn't the huge success that everybody thought it was going to be.
I mean, the career is a lot like that, man. It's so strange. I mean, or life is like that. But you get this huge, incredible opportunity. I'm the lead with Bob Hoskins, a great actor I admired. Yeah. This okay script. You know, the script wasn't good, but the directors were great. Yeah. And I just come off doing Spicorama and Carlito's Way, and they said, you know, we're just going to give you a lot of freedom, and then you know, the freedom didn't really happen, but I was able to create this character, but I wasn't really able to like really elevate the material. It was really, really difficult, and then it wasn't a big hit, you know, and so, you know, life brings you all these great opportunities that sometimes are disappointing in some ways, and then. Now, 20 years later, all these people tweet me constantly how important this movie was to them and how many people love it. Where's number 2? Yeah. And then Bob Hoskins passed and Dennis Hopper passed, and you're like, wow, I got to work with them and I got to spend a lot of time with them. So now I look at the movie kind of fondly, you know. Yeah. It was I had a lot of fun in that movie off camera.
But real quick, in the moment, you know, when this has happened and it's not the success that you thought it was going to be, are you good? You just bounced back? You just went on, worked on something else? You didn't like wallow in that for a little while?
I wallowed in it for a little while. You know, I didn't feel responsible for it. So I think that's what took the onus from me, because I didn't feel like it was my fault. You know, I didn't write the piece. I did the best I could with the circumstances. But yeah, you know, it was disappointing. Definitely a disappointing moment going, oh, wow, I wish this would have blown up and been big.
But you're lucky that you've done so many different things that you could go do stage. Like you can always just sort of like bounce back.
I did bounce right back. Then I went and did To Wong Fu that, you know, pretty soon right after. Yeah. And then I just kept going. You know, I think if you have talent, you can always bounce back. Yeah. I mean, that's really the key. You have an ability and a talent, you can always bounce back. You don't.
Yeah.
It's gonna be really tough to bounce back if you don't have skills.
You're like the video game thing didn't work out. I'm gonna put on a dress.
Right. Well, at that point in my career, I just loved being anything that was as far away from me as possible, man.
Yeah.
And then I did Spawn, the Clown, just stuff that's as further from me as possible. It was just what I dug. Now that I'm mature.
Now you want to be you.
Yeah. Now kind of I want to be me. I want to be me. I got it. I think that's where we should go.
That's great. Yeah.
When I start singing, it's definitely a place to leave.
Thanks so much, John.
Thank you. Pleasure, man.
How about that, right? Jonn Leguizamo. The ROIL podcast was not was not something I ever expected to be able to say. But as we spoke about during the interview, John has a new graphic novel coming out called Ghetto Klown, based on his one-man show. So I've got a little bit of pull in the comics world, so we managed to make that work. That happened at Book Expo here in New York City a couple months back. Really, so much fun. So what an awesome time sitting down with John and having that conversation. I thought we covered a lot of ground there. Thanks so much to John for taking the time to do that, and it was a very, very crazy show for him. In fact, Book Expo is kind of crazy, and there's if you've never been, there's this whole big kind of like pressy area up top. That's where all the publishers are, and that's where they have all the copies of the books, and that's where you talk to the PR people, and then downstairs it's just basically this giant cattle call of people trying to get autographs from celebrities. So when John was arriving, we had to coordinate our interview in a very specific place. We had to do it away from everybody in the like way back of the room. He was about to go on and do a panel with actually a couple of former guests were on that one. Sarah Benincasa was a moderator. Liz Winstead, who had been on the show a while back to talk about Lady Parts Justice. Judah Friedlander, who oh my God would love to have on the show. Hopefully we'll be able to set that up sometime in the near future. But so we kind of grabbed this room in the back, and this was a two-part interview. I hope the sound quality wasn't too different between the first and second part, but we were doing it in the little conference room, and then we got kicked out because a couple dudes wanted to do a podcast in there, and apparently would not have us in the background having our conversations. We had to move to this kind of weird it's just like weird, this super weird area of the Javits Center that looked like it had been abandoned for like 20 years. So we were just literally standing up, leaning against the wall for the second half of that. But I thought it was fun and fascinating and wonderful and great nonetheless. So thanks so much to John for taking the time to do that. Thanks to Maya Abrams for setting that up. Ghetto Klown, you can check it out over on Abrams Publishing. It's written by John, based on his one-man show of the same name, and illustrated by Christa Cassano and Shamus Beyale. Thanks to Brian, as always, for editing this thing together. Thanks to everybody at the Boing Boing Podcast Network. If you like the show, you can check out many other fine shows over at iTunes. And while you're over at iTunes, you should take the opportunity to rate the show if you liked what you heard. You can send us some feedback. It's roilcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Tumblr, roilcast.tumblr.com. That is the first and best place to find everything about the show. And I'm noticing right now that iTunes has done a weird thing, and now only 50 episodes of the show are up on iTunes right now. So you can find every single episode. Those are all still up over at Tumblr. In the meantime, I'll see what I can do about addressing that iTunes situation. If anybody has any advice on that front, I would be greatly accepted as well. Thanks to you guys, as always, for sticking around and listening to the show and giving all of your feedback. I guess that's about all I got for this week. So we will be back just about this time next week with another episode of RAYL.